Hey everyone, Vincent here from thecreativedojo.net. Welcome to another video tutorial. Now this video is not going to be a full-on tutorial. This is going to be something new that I'm going to try out, and it's basically me going to be kind of walking you through, showing you some tips and tricks here and there. So basically not a full tutorial, but we are going to be walking through how to achieve some of this effect right here within After Effects and how to kind of bring life to it. Now if you haven't seen this before, this is actually a tutorial, a Photoshop tutorial by Howard over at iceflowstudios.com here, and he creates this thing using only Photoshop. And I thought, you know what, it'd be a pretty interesting scene to do this in After Effects, and maybe bring more motion and more liveliness to this animation here, or to this still image here. So I brought it to After Effects here and try to recreate it using After Effects, try to add some motion here, and kind of works out. But once again, I'm just going to be walking you through some of the basic tips and ideas to kind of get you started. This is going to be a full improvise, I guess on the spot tutorial, so hopefully no editing will be needed for this, and hopefully it won't stutter too much. So let's hop into After Effects here and just take a look at how we can kind of create this using After Effects to maybe give you an idea on how to create a space scene within After Effects, and then you can kind of feel free to experiment and kind of create your own little Earth epic space scene. So that's in After Effects. Let's go ahead and create a new composition. And I'm just going to call this the main comp. And it's going to be 720p at 24 FPS. And duration doesn't necessarily matter. We're going to hit OK. So now we have a blank composition here. Now I have an image of a planet texture here. And pretty much what it is just kind of a texture map or a planet map of the Earth. And I'm just going to bring this into a new composition. And basically it's just a flat out grid texture of the Earth. And then we're going to call this, let me just organize this real quick. I guess this can be considered somewhat of a live stream because I'm doing this on the spot. I'm going to call this original. And I'm just going to drag in all the original stuff into the original folder so we have some room here. So this is our main comp that we created. This is the new composition that we just created with the Earth stuff here. Let me just close all this up. I'm going to call this planet map, and this is just going to be the map of the Earth right here. So we're going to take that composition and bring it into the main comp. So planet map, we're going to bring it into this composition right here. This is the 720p comp, and this is the 2K comp right here, 2000 by 1000 resolution. And it's a good idea to kind of organize your workflow, kind of organize and reassort your workspace here. So I'm going to call this just planet texture. I'm going to create a new folder and call this, I guess, media assets. And again, these are not really my ordinary tutorials. These are just kind of unscripted, me ranting on about some stuff. So hopefully it'll turn out pretty well. So I have the main comp here. I have the planet map here. And I'm going to go ahead and want to convert this into a sphere or an Earth. And we can do that using the CC sphere effect. And we're going to drag that into the texture layer. And now we have an Earth. Now it looks pretty good. Looks very old school, retro, Star Wars feel. And I mean original Star Wars. And I'm going to increase the radius. Make it pretty darn large. And then we're going to offset it down. So it kind of fills the whole frame here. Just about maybe almost half of the composition size. Scale it up. So now that we have that set, let's go ahead and work on the lighting, because in the original scene you can kind of see that not everything is lit, just kind of the top part of it, and it kind of gives it the eclipse look. Now if you want to check out this tutorial using Photoshop, definitely check out iceflowstudios.com where he has all these tutorials in place. So in After Effects here, I'm going to go into the lighting, and I'm going to set the light direction to 0. So now the light source is going to come from the top direction right here. And then I'm going to mess around with the light height right here. Kind of play around with it until you get a very nice subtle eclipse look. And then we can increase the intensity to kind of give it more contrast. So just the edge of the Earth is going to be lit and everything else is going to be kind of dark. And you want to just play around with these settings here. And you can even animate these settings. So if you kind of want to create the eclipse look, definitely animate the light height. Gives it a pretty interesting look here. So we're going to set it to about 51, negative 51 here. And if you kind of want to animate and rotate this thing, I believe we can go into the, let's see here, rotation, and just play around with the rotation here. I believe you can animate the Y direction, yes. And then I'm going to hit Alt or Option and click on the stopwatch right here to bring up the expressions controls for the rotation Y. I'm going to type in time asterisk 1.5. And that's just going to multiply the value from the time and 1.5 as the factor. So our Earth planet is going to move very so slightly. Something very subtle. And again, these are just kind of little pointers to kind of give you ideas on what to do and to kind of solve some of your issues. So now that we have our Earth somewhat set up, let's go ahead and work on the lighting more and also some of the globes you see here. So I'm going to go into the planet map and I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to duplicate it. So now we have 2 planets here. I'm going to call this one planet, and this is going to be the original planet. And this is going to be somewhat of the outer glow. So I'm going to call this outer glow. And I'm going to apply a glow effect to the top one here. So stylize glow. We're going to bring it in. And by default, it's going to use the original colors of this composition. So I want to set the original colors to A and B colors. So now we can define our colors in A and B. I'm going to select this one and we're going to make it a blue color. You know, relatively dark. And then we're just going to make the same here, so no confusion. And then we're going to decrease the threshold a little bit, so it kind of picks up more of the brighter colors. And you know, maybe you can even animate this. Maybe you're trying to create somewhat of a virus scene and you're showing the Earth getting swallowed by a virus or some lotus or maybe some crickets. I don't know. Planet of the Apes right here. So once we get a decent amount, just the top here, we're going to increase the radius just so we have a very so subtle atmosphere kind of blue glow hint to our Earth. And this is going to be very subtle. And then we can do the same thing for our outer glow here. So I'm just going to copy this thing, edit, copy, go into our outer glow here. We're going to paste it in. And this one's going to be a little bit bigger to give it more sense of layers in the atmosphere, the stratosphere, and stuff like that. So we're going to maybe play around with the threshold, get more colors here, more area, and then we can increase the radius. Maybe even the intensity a little bit. And maybe we can make this a little bit brighter. Again, you want to mess around with the colors, you want to experiment on your own. So adjust some of these a little bit, maybe make it a little bit more, less blue. So you know, maybe something like that. Let's go ahead and set up our star particles or atmosphere now. Let's go ahead and create a new solid layer. And I'm just going to call this star particles. And for this one, you can use CC Particle World, which will come with your Adobe After Effects installation. I'm going to use Particulate just because it's very, very easy to use. I'm going to drag that in. I'm going to drag it underneath everything. And then I'm going to go to the emitter here and just change the emitter type from point to box. And then I'm going to really increase the size of this box. So I'm going to expand a little bit and really create some nice depth. I'm going to go to the extra emission because as you see here, it's not really born yet. Nothing's really emitted yet. So we're going to make it pre-run before time or beforehand. So now our particles will be born at 0. And then we can change the particle life to a lot longer. So maybe about 10, depending on what you need it to be. Change the size to about 1.5. And this is all unscripted here. My apologies. And then we're going to go to opacity over life. Now we want the particles to not really fade in or fade out, but if they are going to die, we want them to nicely, smoothly, and gradually fade out. So we're going to select this one right here. And then we're going to really increase the number of particles. So we have a lot of stars in our star field here. And by default, the star particles will move relatively fast. So we want to change the velocity to maybe about like 1 or so. So now they're not as moving as much. And again, this is from a motion graphic standpoint, so none of this is going to be really realistic, so to say. So we can change it to about 2. So we just have some very subtle movement in these star particles. And then we can duplicate the star particles and call this one smoke particles. And we'll just decrease the number of particles. We don't want that much. We're going to go into the particle type, and to create our nice cloudlet or smoke, we're going to create cloudlet particles. And then we're really going to increase the size. Now I know there isn't really smoke in space. I guess you can consider it kind of cosmic dust, or whatever you want to call it. But in motion graphics, it just looks right. So we're going to add some atmosphere here. We're really going to decrease the opacity down. Usually 1 and lower is a really good value for smoke here. So I'm going to increase the size a little bit more. Something like that to give a very subtle effect. You can use a fractal noise if you wanted to. And then we're going to go into the color and just kind of blend it and add the smoke a little bit better. So we're going to select a very dark blue. Just so that it is kind of blended into our scene a little bit better. And who knows, we can even mask this thing out. So we're going to get the mask tool here, elliptical mask tool. We're just going to draw a nice elliptical mask around our smoke particles, or around our globe here. And then we're going to feather this thing out just so that the smoke is only kind of around our Earth, to kind of give it that smoky atmosphere. So we're going to go and feather this thing out. And that's not really working because I think we need to pre-compose this real quick. So I'm going to delete the mask here. I'm going to pre-compose this thing. So layer pre-compose. We'll call it smoke. Move all attributes into the new composition. That's very important. Hit OK. And I'm going to set the resolution down to half. It's starting to get kind of intensive here. And now I believe we can just take the elliptical mask tool and kind of mask this thing out. Yes. Can adjust the points a little bit. So now it's all masked out, and then we're going to feather it out so that the smoke is only around this area. We can hit MM on the keyboard and just kind of expand the mask expansion a little bit, just so we have some smoke around our atmosphere. Something like that. And just like that, we created our nice kind of smoky atmosphere. And remember that our smoke actually does animate. Our stars are somewhat moving. We have some nice rotation in our Earth. And you can do some pretty interesting stuff. Now let's go ahead and create our lens flare right here, like Howard did right here. It's a lot easier in After Effects with plugins. So I'm going to create a new solid layer. I'm going to call this lens flare. Now, traditionally, I would normally use optical flares by Video Copilot. Very fast, very easy to use. But, since we're doing a new type of tutorial here, let's go ahead and do something different. Let's apply null light factory. I haven't used this thing in a very long time. And I thought, what the heck? Let's use null light factory. So I'm going to bring in the null light factory easy because, why go the hard way? And it looks pretty different. It looks very different for optical flares, for those of you who have not seen null light factory. But this is the grandfather of optical flares. Man, this is like the original lens flare plugin for After Effects. So I'm going to take the flare type to, let's just see here. What's a good one? Bright blue light, or bright blue light flare right here. And we're just going to see what this looks like. We're going to use unmult, so it's going to apply it to our scene. And then we can use the GPU because my GPU is pretty darn good. And then we can actually scale it down a little bit. Now you can see that we have a little problem here. We want our lens flare to be kind of behind our Earth a little bit to kind of give it the elliptical look. But if you put the lens flare underneath everything, it looks bad. Even with the additive blending mode here. Looks pretty bad. And aside from the lens flare itself, the lens flare kind of enhances the sharp edge of our planet. So I guess we could feather the edges out a little bit on this planet here, but that's just too much work. So we can't put the lens flare behind our planet Earth here, and we can't really put our lens flare on top of it either because it just looks kind of tacky. So what we can do to kind of fake the look of this thing is kind of mask this area here. So only a little bit of the lens flare showing right here, and then the rest is showing it on top. So, you know, for technique wise, I would usually just mask it out. But again, for technique wise, I'm going to show you guys the obscuration layer here. So I'm going to scale this up. So basically, I only want the lens flare to be kind of on the upper part of the planet as well as the top of the planet up here. So I want to mask all this thing out. So we're going to use an obscuration layer. I'm going to create a new layer real quick. And we'll just call this obscuration. Hit OK. And we're just going to mask this thing out. So first of all, I'm going to pre-compose this thing. I'm going to call this obs layer. Hit OK. And we're going to be using, let's open this thing up real fast. We're going to be using the alpha channel to kind of drive our obscuration layer. So whatever is alpha is going to be our lens flare. Whatever is not alpha is going to be nothing. So you can see that if we turn off this layer, in the background is transparency. We want to turn on our layer here, and we kind of want to mask it out. So we're going to mask the bottom part of the composition here. So basically what we have here is nothing, and the alpha part right here is going to be the lens flare. And we want to feather it out a little bit, maybe like that, and kind of adjust this a little bit, just so we have a very nice soft edge. So again, the alpha is going to be where the lens flare is, and everything that's not alpha is going to be nothing. It's going to obscure the lens flare. So we're going to go back into the main comp here, and we're going to turn off the obscuration layer. We don't need that. And you can kind of see what it does here already. The black's going to hide this part here. And so we're going to do that right now. We're going to go into the lens flare and then set the obscuration layer to the obs layer. And we're going to use the alpha. So let's see what happens here. You can see that if we, completely disable the mask here, if you just delete the mask, there's no alpha. And back into the main comp, there's no flare because everything that's not alpha is going to obscure the lens flare. So if we just enable the mask again and just tweak it a little bit, you can see that now we have our lens flare. And we want to block out more of the bottom, so we can go back into the obscuration layer, kind of increase or expand the black area here. Let's just kind of hide a little bit more. Just like that. And that may be a little bit too much here. So again, it's all experimenting. Just like that. So now we have less lens flare at the bottom of the globe here. So we can increase the scale a little bit. You can increase the brightness a little bit. And just like that, we have kind of this somewhat of an epic space scene here. And then of course you can add your own titles to it. You can do your flybys, you can do your atmosphere camera pan and zoom and stuff like that. I'm just going to apply a quick color correction. So I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. We'll call it the CC. And we're going to create or use curves and apply some basic contrast to this. Yeah, S curve a little bit. And then maybe we can decrease the flare. And of course you can go crazy with the colors and just play around with the color channels and such like that, but I'm going to leave it like that. This has just been a really quick tutorial to kind of show you guys what you can do with CC spheres, some obscuration layers, lens flares, and a planet map texture. So hopefully this gave you a pretty decent idea on how to create somewhat of a space scene. Whether you're creating something like this, or maybe a hero's title where you're creating a moon. This can be many things, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of unscripted, quick improv tutorial. If you guys like it, let me know in the comments. This has been a really unscripted tutorial, so bear with me now. If you guys don't like it, tell me why, and then I'll just abandon it. But pretty much, this has been a really quick tutorial. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. My name is Vincent Wynn from thecreativedojo.net. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope to hear all your feedback in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time.